Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Matthew back with the final episode of round 2 of the My Favorite LJN tournament revisited. The last 6 matchups before we do cut into the third round. And just recap, there have been a lot of huge, highly successful figures that I figured would go extremely far in this competition that have already been removed. So just like I said, in the first time I did this tournament, it's all about the placement of the figures as they sit on the shelves. So unlike the first time I did the tournament, I did not move, certain figures against other competitors in order to move them forward, because I knew that in particular figure had a much greater opportunity to progress further in the competition than others. So the first round was essentially all about putting customs against originals. And every now and then, if I didn't have a custom, you'd have an original versus an original, or custom versus custom, etc. So you did have some eliminations, but not many. In the first round, we ended up with 80 victors. So as we complete round 2, we're going to end up with 40 victors. And of course, we're going to gradually cut it down in half each round, down to 20, 10, and then 5. Once we get to round 6, again, we're going to have 5 victors at that point, and that's going to be a tough call. Do I have one-on-one and then one-on-one-on-one? Or do I have one-on-one and then another one-on-one and then have the leftover move on to a 3-way finals? That might be the best choice, because I think it's going to give, a much greater opportunity to talk about some other figures and not just kind of like just diving on the same figures over and over again. Like the first time I did this tournament, when I get to round 6, round 7, I'm probably going to, I will keep them in the same video, because you're only looking at about 3 matchups or so, and it's pointless to kind of break it down into 2 different videos. So, the 130 plus figures the first time I did this tournament, over 200 this time, and it's still going to come down to 7 rounds, so that was interesting. I actually expected it to go a whole lot further. But I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to dive right into the battles. And the first matchup we're looking at are... So the first 2 matches is going to feature Wrestlingwriter figures. And the first one is going to feature the King Kong Bundy version with Dusty Rhodes against the Nikolai Volkov version of Sergeant Slaughter. Well, so Sergeant Slaughter, I keep talking about it. Slaughter, Abdullah the Butcher, Ric Flair. I kept seeing their LJN counterparts whenever I looked at these figures, so it was really hard for me to think of them any other way. But I don't know if anyone watches Roswell. So the original Roswell series back in 1999, probably hands down one of my all-time favorite shows. And in 2019, they remade the show, Roswell, New Mexico. And why is that important to this particular tournament? So, for the first few episodes, I kept complaining to myself, harping on every little detail, how they changed this, or how they messed that up, or, how they screwed up this relationship by changing the characters' personalities, etc. But once I shut up and let it and just focus on the series as an individual show and stop comparing it to other shows, I absolutely love Roswell, New Mexico. I think it's one of the greatest shows, that obviously the CW ever came out with. Is it better than the original? That's a tough one, because, we're talking over 20 years of enjoyment from that, from the original show. And, when I looked at a figure like Sergeant Slaughter, I had the same mindset. I kept comparing it to the Nikolai Volkov because that's all I saw when I looked at this figure. But once I stopped really looking at it as Nikolai Volkov and started really focusing on the artistry and detail of the Sergeant Slaughter, I really gained a greater appreciation for it. And Abdullah the Butcher in particular was one of my all-time favorites. And you really can't take anything away from this particular figure. Everything from adding the perfect Ultimate Warrior Championship belt, which was fantastic. The overall design of the camouflage shirt. Even the boots, man. I mean, just look at that. That's so spectacular. and they kind of like flatten out the head of the look of, give him the nice little bald look of Sergeant Slaughter. The hunchback, it's still there, not as predominant as you would see in the original figure, but I mean, it's, they did what they could to try and shave that down some. So this is a resin figure, but it kind of reminds me of what I've been planning on with one of my King Kong Bundys. So I sent Wrestlingwriter a whole box of figures. Among some of the projects that I wanted him to do was kind of cut off the arms of a Big John stud and put them on a King Kong Bundy figure. Now, this obviously isn't going to be exactly, like what I'm looking at when that figure does come in, but this is what I'm talking about. You're going to take, Big John Stud, who has one of my favorite poses, and you're going to put on a King Kong Bundy figure, which I absolutely love, but I despise his fighting pose. This Dusty Rhodes figure is absolutely remarkable. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the first time I did this tournament, he squared off against Abdul the Butcher and lost, so he was a one-and-done figure. And it sucks because, like I said, you want to see some of the most amazing figures move forward because you want to have the opportunity to talk about them more often. So his belt does say Dusty Rhodes, which is great. And as I said before, this is a super long belt. I mean, this isn't something that's glued on there. It actually wraps around his whole body. It's just an enormous belt. This is a tough choice because, I mean, this is a rubber figure. That alone gives it so many much more props than any of the resin figures you'll find. Color scheme wise, Sergeant Slaughter all the way. So fighting pose wise, this is I mean, the Dusty Rhodes is a fine figure fighting pose wise. He's got his arm way back there, kind of like a Terry Funk, and this arm up right here. So he doesn't have a good fighting two-arm body slam or anything. So I still like the Sergeant Slaughter better in that respect. For fighting pose wise. I mean, look at that body slam, amazing. Two fantastic pieces. I'm comfortable selecting either one to move forward to round 3. I think either one could potentially go 4, maybe 5 rounds, given the right matchup. It's a tough one. I'm going to go with Dusty Rhodes on this one. It sucks that I had to get rid of Sergeant Slaughter so quickly, but 2 rounds in this kind of tournament, just making it out of the first, sometimes you just got to be happy with that. Watching a lot of shoot interviews with Bad News Brown, and he talks about his matches with Dusty Rhodes, and obviously one man's opinion is just that, an opinion. 1,000 people can have a great relationship with somebody, and another person can have a bad relationship. So you don't want to assume that the person that has a bad relationship is is telling the truth, or if that's synonymous with the person, their character. But he was talking about Bad News Brown was talking about how racist this man was and how he wouldn't allow him to win in his matches or something. I'm like, man, that's heartbreaking. I'm not as huge of a fan of Dusty Rhodes as some other characters, so it doesn't hurt quite as much, but it's just something to think about. Even if you don't agree with the person's lifestyle, whatever, it's not about their character. Again, this tournament is about the figures themselves. The person, I keep saying it, the person or what they mean to you, like Hulk Hogan, like the Mean Gene Okerlund, like Vince McMahon, etc., should have no input into this tournament. It's all about the design and play of the figures. And this is a good one. Solid weight to it, good pose, great look. Dusty Rhodes, round 3 figure. The last of the Wrestlingwriter figures are a couple of resin figures, which features the Great Muta going against Mr. Perfect. And I'm trying to remember. I think the Great Muta defeated Jimmy Garvin in the first round. And that's significant because I think Jimmy Garvin was like a 4th or 5th round figure the first time I did the tournament. So Great Muta has one of my all-time favorite facial paints. You know, they kind of switch out the or the Ricky Steamboat pose just enough to make it a more unique figure by altering the hand positioning. Overall, absolutely beautiful figure. It's strictly a display piece. You know, nothing you could ever give to your kids for play or anything like that. I mean, drop this once, you're probably going to shatter it. Luckily, I haven't had it fall off my shelf, so I haven't had to worry about that. Multiple time champion in several different countries. This man was a significant wrestler. And if this Mr. Perfect was a rubber figure, this would be about as perfect as a figure as you're going to find. His arms are out there, maybe a little too much, possibly. I don't know. It's still a great figure. With again, he has all these dual colored singlets, which I absolutely love. Face wise, this is the good thing about resin figures, is you're gonna get that 3D print which is pretty much perfection, so human like. Whereas, you know, a lot of your other figures are going to be more of a cartoon type look. Great looking figure, awesome color and detail to it, and a phenomenal pose. And at the end of the day, that is what's going to put this figure over the top. Mr. Perfect against Great Muta, absolutely no competition. Perfect is going to win. Moving on to round 3. If Mr. Perfect squared off against Jimmy Garvin, would there have been a difference? Doubtful. I think Mr. Perfect still would have taken this matchup regardless. So I didn't look this one up. I should have. I said I was. I've been calling this one Jeff, but it could be Matt. I just don't remember. Obviously, they had the name in the description when I bought it, but I'm not familiar with the Hardy brothers, so I've been calling this Jeff. I'm going to stick with Jeff. Jeff Hardy versus John Ruggiero's British Bulldog. So I didn't think this one would make it out of round 1. And then I just really held up and realized how sensational this figure is. So yes, they use a Brutus Beefcake. They change the pose. So get rid of that gloved hand. Give him these little fingers up. Even got the 2 fingers curled over right there. That is so awesome. The overall colors, both the face paint as well as, you know, the sleeve tattoo, I think they call it. Of course, it could be just a regular shirt. But then they got those T-shirts that go over the arms that look like real life tattoos, but they aren't. I'm thinking that's what that was intended to be. And for whatever reason, I decided to buy a gold belt, a gold belt with silver plates. And it fits beautifully for the figure. I absolutely love it. And going up against the John Ruggiero British Bulldog, I'm thinking I might actually like the Jeff Hardy figure a little bit better. The thing that the British Bulldog has over Jeff Hardy, for starters, they switched up the hand. So, you know, guys like Greg Valentine, you know, Bruce Brody, they got that left arm up. So this one, they kind of switched it up and used it as right arm up, which is better. And the accessory, which is built into the hand of the figure, is also great. And you can't deny the colors of this figure is absolutely remarkable. And then, you know, like his little dreadlocks or whatnot, even a little white at the tips here. I mean, that is just awesome. I don't know what those are, like buttons or I don't know. I don't have dreadlocks. I will never have dreadlocks. I don't know how they make those. The only downside of the figure, and I mentioned it, you know, several times over, is kind of like the cartoon look of the figure. You know, not very, you know, human-like or 3D print look. You know, you could look at a Mr. Perfect and say, without even seeing anything else, and know that's Mr. Perfect. You're going to look at this and you're not really going to have much of an idea. Try to look body slam wise. It's a good one. Obviously, with the built-in display, that's all it is. It's display. You're not going to ever wrestle this. You could if you wanted to, but that would include ripping out the chain accessory with the Matilda Bulldog, and nobody wants to do that. Two absolutely phenomenal figures, and I don't know. This isn't gonna be like a heartbreaker one way or the other, but it's still a tough decision choosing which one you like a little bit better. Let's see, we got two more matchups, and we're at 15 minutes, so this video will probably go 25 minutes, which I'm good with, because these 40-minute videos, I'm sure, are really taking a toll on people. Yeah. I'm going to stick with the British Bulldog. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be a 4th or 5th rounder, but I think a 3rd round figure, for a 3rd rounder, he's still a good one. Also from John Ruggiero, features both the Mountie and Kane. You know, Kane is actually one of the bigger guys, right? But you look at these figures, sometimes he looks so much smaller than his other counterparts. So, based on the fighting pose, this looks more like a Hillbilly Jim type figure. Obviously, Hillbilly Jim, I think, is a little bit bigger than this. And like Brutus Beefcake, and I'm trying to think who else. Scott Steiner would be another one. When you look at the back of the hair of these figures, it's very flat, very smooth. But it's a Kane figure. I mean, that's what I love about it. I mean, how often are you going to come across Kane as LJN? And is it the most elite figure you'll ever find? Probably not. But is it a good one? Absolutely. One I was ecstatic to get. But he's going against a Mountie figure. In my opinion, obviously, I like Nikolai Volkov pose a whole lot better than a Hillbilly Jim pose. So that gives him credit. The built-on hat accessory is absolutely amazing. And just the overall design, you know. They even flattened out the arch of Nikolai Volkov's shoulders and back here. So it made it a little bit more flat. So they basically did turn this into a whole different figure. Not necessarily a whole new rubber mold, but again, by shaving down that back, they did a phenomenal job with this particular figure. I love Kane as a character a lot more than Mountie. I just don't know. These are just two really good figures. And, you know, they're both cartoony. There's not really, you know, one that really stands out more than the other as far as being a more 3D printed type look to it or anything like that. They're just two fun figures that, you know, any collector would love to have. I want to talk about this a little bit more because I want to make sure that I make the right decision. I think I might be leaning towards the Mountie. But again, it's just really hard for me to put down a Kane. And many a times I've made a decision, and then sometimes I'll be talking about it, and then I'll end up going with the other guys. So, like I said, I want to make sure I make the right choice. And regardless of whether or not I think a character or a figure is going to win the competition, right now it's not about winning, thinking about, hey, is that going to win the competition? It's about making it to the next round. It's about making it past through multiple future rounds. You can't know if a figure is going to win the competition not until you get to that last round. So just getting there is what's important. And right now, it's a tough call. I am going to go with the Mountie. I honestly believe, based on this look, that the Mountie has a much better chance of winning, or at least going a whole lot further in competition than Kane does. So I am pushing Mountie past Kane into round 3. Alright, everybody. The very last matchup for round 2. It's going to feature two significant pieces from the Raider Nation and by artist Kenny Lester, and it is the 1-2-3 Kid versus Mr. T. So right off the bat, you're going to notice the one big obstacle that one figure has over the other. You have a Rick Martel original body pose, which is one of the top 20, if not top 25, or at worst, top 25 fighting poses, going against a Tito Santana type fighting pose, which I absolutely despise. But the Mr. T figure as a whole, everything from the head to the mohawk to the display of his pants and boots is just absolutely remarkable. Yes, 123 Kid was pulled from a Rick Martel figure, and it looks fantastic. The the 123 Kid blends in so well with the Rick Martel figure, so they made an excellent choice by going with this guy. But is it overall, is the color scheme better? Is this 123 Kid going to offer a better opportunity to win this tournament over Mr. T himself? These are two exceptional figures. I can't remember how I listed them. I think I had Mr. T as like my third favorite Raider Nation figure, so I don't know if I had. No, I don't know. I didn't have a 123 Kid at the time, so he's basically unlisted on my Raider Nation list of figures. This really is a tough one, because they are, two special figures, and you guys all know how much I love the Raider Nation, how much I love the figures that are made by Kenny Lester. Kenny Lester of Raider Nation, one of three artists that I look for more than anything is their particular LJN custom figures. Yeah, I am going to go with 123 Kid. I think it's only fair that not only, there's a lot of things that I love about the 123 Kid figure. Yes, body pose with Rick Martel definitely helps. That definitely put it over the top. Color scheme is amazing. I would have preferred myself one of the blue singlet figures like you would get from Hasbro, much more than the black and white, but still a beautiful figure. And secondly, you know what? I lied. That was not the last matchup. And I had a feeling, like, I was kind of talking about this figure, and I'm like, I'm missing a figure here, because I know I didn't have another one that I really coveted. So this was not the last matchup. This actually should have been the last matchup, but I missed one. Okay, so I got one more matchup, guys. But this is one of those figures that I really wanted on LJN. Guys like Undertaker, I wanted to see as LJN. I wanted to see Yokozuna as LJN. I wanted to see 123 Kid as LJN. And I wanted to see Doink as LJN. Now, this is the very last matchup of round 2. It's Doink versus Rick Steiner. So, Rick Steiner comes from John Ruggiero, the 1J Rugs 79 on eBay, whereas Doink comes from the Raider Nation. And again, I talked about before, KL, Kenny Lester, he prints his little initials on here. So amazing. So, obviously with this particular figure, they've got a Harley Race type pose going against a Iron Sheik type pose. If we were going off a pose alone, Ric Flair all the way destroys, Doink. Color scheme wise, because he's got more color, that definitely gives Doink the leg up. But going off of kind of like the Hasbro design of the Series 9 Rick Steiner is incredible. The figure has what many of the John Ruggiero figure has, and that's that straight, soft head. And he's got that built-on headpiece for his wrestling gear. The multicolored singlet, it's amazing. And they even filed down the little elf shoes of the Iron Sheik figure. So, they give you kind of like a little cartoon look, which, again, I'm not a huge fan of, but it's okay, it works. Just to have the Steiner brothers in general as LJN is pretty amazing. But he's going against a Doink figure that, again, like 123 Kid, it's a character I absolutely coveted and was dying to see as an LJN figure. Because Raider Nation, they choose specific characters, specific figures, based on the character they're molding after it. maybe that makes sense. Cause you look at the figure, with the hands in like that, it's kind of tricky, like a little trickster, you know, or something. So like a real schemer. So the hand pose, it kind of works for me. For wrestling wise, you know, it's rubber still. You can still give it to your kids for play if you wanted to, but adults, we're not doing that. We're looking at them for enjoyment and to be able to make these videos and allow others to enjoy them as well. Such a creepy, fantastic look to the face. The only downside, and if you call it a downside, I don't know, is that they pretty much painted over the skin, so it's not like, you know, built-in I don't want to say accessories, because it's not an accessory, but they had, like, you know, you could actually feel a little stump or something to say, okay, that's where the vest is or something. They don't do that. That's the only downside of the figure. But overall, this is an absolute beauty. I don't think I'm going to harsh too long on these two figures. I've made my decision, and I am going to go with Doink from the Raider Nation to push forward to round 3. Alright, so I'm going to have to pause on a couple of these because I got the matches up, but I don't have the winners. So, where did round 2 start? So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Alright, so this is how round 2 played out. Stud defeats Andre number 1. Custom Hogan defeats Volkov. Piper over Sheik. Andre number 2 over Custom Beefcake. Greg Valentine Custom defeats King Kong Bundy. Again, King Kong Bundy, around 5 last time. Custom Bobby Heenan defeats Bruno Sammartino. Corporal Kirchner defeats Freddie Blassie. Freddie Blassie, who was a 4th rounder the first tournament. Custom Davey Boy defeats Custom Dynamite. Macho Man Custom defeats Jimmy Hart. Don Morocco defeats Mean Gene Okerlund. S.J. Jones Hawaiian defeats Ricky Steamboat. Again, Custom from Wrestlingwriter. Billy Jack Haynes defeats Terry Funk. Jim Brunzell Custom defeats B. Brian Blair. And Bret Hart Custom from Wrestlingwriter defeats Jim Neidhart Custom. Elizabeth from Mega Powers defeats Jake Roberts. Kamala defeats Ken Patera. Or Custom Ken Patera, that came from Wrestlingwriter. Custom Coco Beware, that's from Raider Nation, defeats Outback Jack. Vince McMahon defeats Bam Bam Bigelow. Axe from Random Treasures defeats Hacksaw. Custom Honky Tonk Man, again Raider Nation, defeats American Made Hogan. And Blackstrap Andre defeats Custom One Man Gang from Wrestlingwriter. Well, technically both of those figures were Wrestlingwriter figures. Pink Referee defeats Slick. Big Boss Man defeats the Custom model Rick Martel from Wrestlingwriter. Ultimate Warrior defeats $1 Million Man Custom from Wrestlingwriter as well. Warlord defeats Haku from Stinger GQ. Ultimate Warrior Volume 2 defeats Barbarian. Brother Love defeats Alpha. Hawk defeats Ric Flair. Both of those were Ram Treasures as well. Continuing on from Ram Treasures, Sid Vicious defeats Animal. Barry Windham defeats Mr. Perfect. Zeus defeats Bob Backlund. And then we've got the Wrestlingwriter Hercules defeats Earthquake. Wrestlingwriter Ultimate Warrior defeats British Bulldog, also from him. And also from Wrestlingwriter, Bruiser Brody defeats Abdullah the Butcher. And these next sets are from Wrestlingwriter. Dusty Rhodes defeats Sergeant Slaughter, and Mr. Perfect defeats Great Muta. And then from John Ruggiero, British Bulldog defeats Jeff Hardy. From John Ruggiero, Mountie defeats Kane. Doink from Raider Nation defeats Rick Steiner from John Ruggiero, and also from the Raider Nation, 123 Kid defeats Mr. T. So again, we had 80 winners in round 1. We have 40 winners here in round 2. When we complete round 3, we'll be down to the bottom 20 figures. It's going to be a good one. I'm really looking forward to making the next round of figures, or next round of competition. So it'll be 20 matchups. So if we get 7, 7, and 4, I'll probably knock down round 3 into 3 videos if I can. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all soon. Goodbye for now.